Okay, so I just finished going through the organs, and now I'm going to look at the actual enzymes and chemical digestion in the digestion system. A lot of this, the actual time here, that is what is for interest. I don't really care how long it takes. I don't really want you to memorize the numbers here. You should be able to figure out what is mechanical and chemical digestion based on the last video, but if it does help you out, feel free to highlight this section of the chart. It was covered in the last video, but that is what you need to know. Okay, so when we're looking at chemical digestion and absorption, let's look at bile and pancreatic fluid because those are from our accessory organs. They help digest fats, carbohydrates, proteins. Bile helps with the fat digestion, starts in the liver, stores, and then it gets stored in the gallbladder. So what enzymes digest what? This was also talked about in note 8, carbohydrates, etc. Lipase, lipids. Remember, anything with the ASE, so the ASE means enzyme. So if you look at the root word, you can figure out what type of enzyme it is based on the root word, and that having A's means it's an enzyme. And it'll break something down. So what will it break down? Carbohydrates will break down carbohydrates. So then, this takes up everything I kind of talked about in the last video. This summarizes it into the chart form. We have our 4 macromolecules here, and we're looking at which organ digests what. So the mouth has amylase, which breaks down carbohydrates. And the stomach has pepsin, which breaks down protein. It does not have sort of the carbohydrates you're thinking, or lipases, or anything to break down nucleotides. That is what we look at in our small intestine, right? So we have pancreatic amylase, breaks down carbohydrates. Sucrose, maltase, lactase, breaks down carbohydrates. This should actually be sucrase. Okay, so it'll break down sucrose. Trypsin is another important enzyme that breaks down proteins. Chymotrypsin breaks down proteins, peptidase. Now, you don't have to remember all these enzymes, but you do have to note that there are a variety of enzymes that come to the small intestine. It's not just one enzyme doing all the work. There are multiple, right? So that is something you need to take into account. The key enzymes that you do have to memorize are amylase. You do have to know pepsin from your stomach, right? And you have to know bile, and you have to realize that pancreatic fluid can break down all 3 macromolecules. So pancreatic fluid contains enzymes for all 3. The rest, I'm not too picky about you memorizing the specific enzymes themselves, but you do need to realize that there are a lot of different enzymes that break down proteins that enter the small intestine, and that is the goal that you should see here. And then there are factors that affect enzyme function. You will study these in detail in grade 12, but basically, as you can see, enzyme activity goes up as it gets hotter. Eventually, it hits a peak where something called denaturing occurs. So enzymes are made of proteins, and at high temperatures, they can denature, which means they sort of break apart. The amino acids no longer are bonded together. So if they break apart, nothing's really breaking down your reactions. That kind of sucks, which means no reactions occurring. Also, pH is important, so certain enzymes work best at certain pHs. Notice trypsin works best at a high pH, pepsin works best at a low pH. Well, pepsin's located in the stomach. Remember I said there was hydrochloric acid that helps maintain pH? Well, that gives it that lower pH for pepsin to work. Whereas trypsin works in your small intestine, which has a higher pH than your stomach. Your stomach is the only organ that has sort of the low pH, and that is because of the hydrochloric acid. Okay, here, this is talking about how things get absorbed in your small intestines, right? So then monosaccharides are converted into glucose. Glucose is the key molecule for cellular respiration, and then glucose gets transported into cells by a cell receptor, which is a protein. It's officially called GLUT4. You don't have to memorize that, but just know a protein will transport it into the cell, driven by, guess what? Diffusion. Amino acids, similar to glucose, they will travel through the bloodstream and then diffuse across the cell membrane. Glycerol and fatty acids are absorbed through the small intestine. They're encoded in proteins to make them water soluble, and then again, diffusion. Now, there's a lot of hormones that help control digestion. Okay, so certain hormones get released when digestion is occurring, and it helps stimulate the release of other digestive enzymes. Okay, so this diagram, you're going to have to follow. These are the 3 important hormones that you need to know. Okay, so gastrin is released in the stomach. So to kind of look through this diagram, you follow the arrow, right? So when gastrin's released, then the mobility increases, secretion increases, and emptying increases, right? So that helps with that. At the basic, you don't have to be able to explain this full pathway because I know it can be confusing. At the end of the day, it's the definition that you need to know. So gastrin works in the stomach, stimulates digestive juices for the stomach. From the stomach, it, I guess, gets used later on, but it's from the stomach. Secretin is releases the pancreatic juices from the pancreas. Okay, so looking at your diagram, so the small intestine is calling for secretin, which goes to your pancreas and says, okay, we need to release these enzymes, and it'll release the enzymes right here, gets released, and that enters your bloodstream. Okay, CCK, I just call it CCK, I don't even try, stimulates the release of bile from the gallbladder into the duodenum. Right, so with CCK, again, helps with the overall bile release. A lot of it, a lot of these diagrams is what you will have to look at in the future if you continue down this path. So you really just follow the origin, stimulation, inhibition means that is what stops, right? So certain hormones help promote digestion, other hormones help stop it. So it just depends. These are the 3 you need to know, and you really just need to know the definition. So where are they released? And by the release of this helps sort of kickstart digestion in those areas. And that's the end. I hope you survived all of that.